Everybody, welcome back. This is SIC Talks number 75, the sesquicentennial for your centennial. Anyway, I don't know how you put 75 into words like that. But my guest today is Heather Pieske. Heather is a friend and former colleague and collaborator of mine on such as yet unrealized dreams as Horse Force and Bananas Foster. But soon enough, the world will know the truth about that. Heather keeps herself busy as the chief creative officer at Superbloom, which is an agency like object based in Los Angeles. And Heather will explain what a chief creative does in a little bit. But Heather is actually returning to the show. This is her second appearance, although she was pre-recording. So she was one of the first 5 guests of the show. And so that was before Instagram Live. The previous platform for this show allowed you to record. It was purely ephemeral. And so that conversation is lost to the sands of time, but this one will be written in the granite of forever.
Hi, everyone.
So welcome.
We love longevity. In a world of things that last only moments, Ben, we like to
This is truly the struggle of our contemporary age is the battle between sustainability and ephemerality, the fleeting and the forever. Where on a continuum between fleeting and forever do you find yourself most days, Heather?
Oh, I've been fleeting recently. I've been heavy on the fleeting side of things. I think it's just a function of the broken brain I and so many people currently have that is filled with, sparks of joy that maybe last only a few seconds, as do ideas. But I'm trying to move into the more lasting, analog, tactical, tangible world. Brought me joy.
This was a discussion at Breakfast Club today. Was about the nature of essentially our broken brains and whether or not craft becomes proof when everything can be created ephemerally and everything can be created by artificial intelligence. Does craft become proof of reality? And are we, as not just as a society, but literally as human beings, like physiologically, evolutionarily, are we drawn to the tactile in a moment like this?
I think so. I think the tactile was always like proof that we were here, and it still remains that, not to go to the obvious, but like those cave drawings, Ben, like those stuck around. Like what are ours? It's not a bunch of tiny little TikTok posts, but who knows? Maybe that will be. Maybe those will last and be studied in 50 years.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. And shout out to Drew who's listening. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody who subscribes to the newsletter who reached out and said, "Okay, could you please record the pod for audio platforms so I can go at it a little bit more easily?" And it turns out that he works at a big social platform, and which I don't want to get into for because I don't want to dox him, but at which I don't control my trademark handle Dietz Nuts with a Z. And so I was like, "Hey man, could you help me get it?" Like I signed up for it when I was at Vice in 2006. Yeah. And so it's tied to my Vice address, which I don't have access to anymore and probably doesn't even exist anymore, et cetera, et cetera. It was literally from like vbs.tv for those who remember. Okay. But he's like, "Well, okay, look, the ways you potentially do it are you demonstrate that you are broadly known at that handle on other platforms. So do a Google of yourself at that handle and we can show." So I did a Google and I found something interesting. I found a Medium post by Virtue that was my artist statement from my photo show at the Virtue office, which I don't know if you recall. This is when you and I worked together at that time. And so I had totally forgotten about that show. Totally forgotten about it, much less any of the ridiculous things that I said in the artist statement. It was fine, but it That was nice of you to say. But in any case, the internet medium in this case, Virtue, the agency that neither of us work at, and which who knows even what state it's in at this point. You may know more than I, but it's like it's keeping track of me in a way that I can't. And I think that's true for everybody. Like everybody has those digital traces. And it's like, so what does future archaeology look like? It looks like going back and discerning all your data signals and going like, the Lost Ark of the Covenant is actually Heather's Instagram stories.
Which is really terrifying. Or it's like, when you go back and it's a lot of those like really sad, weird filters of like my shoes. This reminds me of, is that still happening where people, I mean, I imagine many people are using like paid services or people to clean up their online identities, because you Google me or anyone else, people don't come up at all, which is terrifying. They have no evidence. But then others, I'm like, you go back, I have like weird YouTube videos from years ago, and it was like new. I have articles I wrote. I have roundtable panels of me just saying word salads, like not knowing what was going on. So I don't know, like that's, on one hand, it's really positive. Also, to your point about Virtue, we're never getting out of there. They're going to be connected to us forever. That's the vice way. But if it's positive, there's like a really interesting, archaeological, cultural snapshot of where we've been on the internet.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you should bring up the idea of those kind of reputation services, because it throws us to our first of what will doubtless be several improvised in-roll ads for reputation.com. Reputation.com is this place where you can clean up your digital reputation. Go to reputation.com and find out how you can eliminate. Okay, Heather, you got to help me here. This is a collaborative. Remember, we're doing collaborative ad reads here.
I was waiting for you to say something great. So, are you sick and
You'd wait a long time.
Are you sick and tired of looking like a dirty little piggy on the internet? Are you embarrassed about your history? Are you questioning your future job prospects? Hit reputation.com to clean up that past to secure your future.
Wow. See, this is what a chief creative officer does, clearly.
That's why they pay me the medium dollars, Ben.
Wow. I mean, come on. That was mellifluous. That was serendipitous. That was, I mean.
Listen, if I could
hey, reputation.com, call us.
Hey, reputation.com, we got this. We can call on pre-edited post-roll all day.
Oh, man. I'll supply the insights, Heather. Yeah, exactly. We'll be back for another spontaneous ad read that'll hopefully be better from my side in a few minutes. But seriously, what is it that you do? Like, what does a chief creative officer do these days?
Oh, it's such a good question. A chief creative officer, I mean, I think they do lots of things at different places. In my instance, my background, as you know, Ben, is filled with a million different jobs. I definitely cobbled together a career over the last 20 years, starting with zero experience. I did not go to any school that taught me how to work in advertising, but it's something I always wanted to do. I wanted to be Helen Hunt in What Women Want, and damn it, I did it. After I left Vice several years ago, I went to Vox, you know that, and ran creative across the content studio. Super Bloom, where I've only been for a few months, is very serendipitous to the article you had sent in this week's around all these new agencies popping up. They're about 3 years old, started by two amazing former 72 and Sunny folks, for those advertising folks watching and listening. And it is an interesting model because it's, one part agency, one part production company, and then I would say one part conduit between brands and really interesting modern makers. They're small by design. They're really big on opening the doors to people that maybe brands can't necessarily find ways to work with on their own, and also helping creators understand how to work with brands. And so the model being, don't grow a massive agency to do big AOR type projects, but keep it keep it really fast, nimble. And invite a lot of freaks into the creative process. Like that is, I think, one of the most interesting parts of this company, and probably why they hired me, is that I don't fit well into a box, and I don't know a lot of rules that are supposed to be there, so I don't know that I'm breaking them.
Where okay, so let's talk about freaks for a second, because the funny enough, there is an article in the newsletter this week which is about the freaks come out to write, which was Trisha Romano, former Sick Talks guest's book about the history of the Village Voice, and its subject matter is less germane to what you said than simply the title and the use of that word. The question mainly being like, where do you find them in that case? Like, you and I are both untrained, like successfully untrained people. Where do you find the untrained of today?
I think, I mean, I think if anything, in like platforms that are mostly democratically accessed as creators or budding creators or thinkers.
So not down by the river then.
It is not down by the river, and unfortunately, it's not LinkedIn. Despite that being my new favorite social platform. Given the, given the ubiquity of people's unhinged rants, which we can get to in this conversation if we want. But I think, I don't know if freaks is an offensive term. I'm not meaning it to be, but I do think we have finally arrived at a place in this industry, but also just in wider creative culture, which I think is fun, where anyone can be a lot of things and publicly tinker and evolve. And a lot of these people who are like the new influencers, which whatever, everyone has influence in some capacity if you're out doing things. But I think there's an interesting thing where like failure is encouraged, showing your learning process publicly is encouraged, showing like allowing your work to evolve is really, encouraged and interesting. And boxes are kind of being taken away from people so they can expand a bit. And so in finding those people, I mean, I don't know about you, but like anyone who's plugged in like us, like we are constantly like conversations you and I have been where we like find these bonkers pockets of the internet of like niche interest, fandom, people explaining hyper specific things that they're interested in. I mean, we saw Francis Bourgeois train guy several years ago go from, I think they're called foamers, which we can come back to, like people who are obsessed with trains. But
no,
like,
train spotters.
Yeah,
train spotters.
Our neurodiverse king, Francis Bourgeois, plucked from obscurity because of his insane obsession with trains, ends up in a Gucci campaign. So like that's to me a great example of like the surfacing of people just fucking being themselves, who have maybe no background, who end up in the realm of marketing and advertising and all of that. And I think that mashup is how it should be. And I think right now culture has hit its stride in that, of seeing the value in finding unlikely pairings, unlikely collectives, all of that. And that's a big part of why I joined Super Bloom, because of that philosophy. And they're new and they're, working out what that looks like. But I think it's also something that, Vice did well when we were there.
No, I was just going to say it's an editorial model in a lot of respects, right? It's like sourcing the most interesting points of view and then figuring out how you can put them to valuable use, right? And whether that's creating an editorial franchise or a commercial property, or I don't know what, developing a new service around it. Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I like it too.
I like that.
Like, I don't know. I personally, so as chief creative officer, I'm the officer of creative. I was hired to be responsible for all creative output.
I work in the office. I'm in the office basically.
Color all day with my mind. I think the remit of this role is interesting depending on the agency or wherever you end up, in-house, whatever. But working on a small team that's like one part content, one part production, it's agency shaped, it's creator driven, that kind of thing. My job contains a lot of stuff. So just the overall vision of like what this company should be known for creatively, for sure. I think I really respect and love, big production companies and things like that have a certain style, like A24, Smuggler, like you kind of know what that kind of work is that you're out of companies. So that's something we're talking a lot internally about, of just like, what's the fingerprint we want on the work? And then the other thing is just really thinking about how to give brands something new. I'm still a nerd for this dumb industry. I still think it's like it doesn't have to be an ad. It can be joyful and entertaining and make you not want to skip it. It can be something you talk about. And I recognize that maybe the wider world doesn't see it like that, but
Yeah.
with brands paying for it, I don't
Well,
think
no. Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
go
The
ahead.
interesting thing about that is I had a call with a guy who is a former culture club guest and who's coming to the cocktails tonight. This is what I was going to say. I'm organizing cocktails at the house tonight, which is all people who have been SIC Talk guests or have been on have
Can
appeared on
I
Culture Club show.
zoom in? What's the vibe?
Well, I mean, you should have gotten an invite because everybody got one, even people who are in LA. But I think we were having some email trouble with your
Wow.
email. Either that or you
Wow.
just decided to selectively pick this invite over that one.
Wow.
Whatever, fine. Your girl, JC Hayes is coming in to pour some Elmar margaritas, which will be fun. Yeah. No, it is. But anyway. Why am I thinking of this? Oh, I was talking to a guy who is a very well-known social creator today, and we had asked him to for a project I'm working on, we'd asked him to come up with a video solution to help expose this limited edition product that I made, or I didn't make it, but I was assisted in the making of it. And he was just like, yeah, I don't want to make a video. I'm tired of video. I want to do a photo carousel. And the photo carousel is going to work way better than the video because all of the services have become each other. And so TikTok wants to be Instagram. So it's elevating carousels, and Instagram realizes that it went too far with Reels. So it's bringing back photos. So that whole thing is going to cut through. Yeah. And I thought that was fascinating. And I also thought it is not the sort of thing that big social agency is likely to say to anybody right now. They might come to that conclusion after some number of data scientists prove it, or after, the chief creative officer notices it or whatever. But it's that truth is going to come essentially up from the streets, proverbially speaking. And I just thought that was really
I think
interesting.
That's really interesting too. I think also, it's tempting to spend a lot of time being the experts as marketers and everything else. But if anything is shown the last several years, like creators have scaled their celebrity and notoriety and presence in culture better than some of the biggest brands, and have, become entities in themselves. So I think, humbling ourselves as marketers and knowing that a lot of those creators that continue to emerge are great sources of insights, and also shape creatively differently.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the story similar to that. A brand that we were speaking to the other day had given a budget to this creator similarly, and asked for something, and he came back and said, no, I'm not going to do that. I have a better idea, and I'm going to do it for like a third of the budget. And he basically, he made this absolutely insane mini film for like a fraction of the cost, and it's absolutely incredible. And it was just a great example too of like creators feeling like they have a voice in the process and not just being like pay to play influencers who like hawk something. Like, they're collaborating with these brands, with teams like mine, and I don't know, I like it. It makes me sharper. It makes me learn things every day and not, stick to certain routines and habits creatively that I've had for a long time.
Where do you feel there's got to be a limit though to it? So for instance, like there was a big story last week. It's not in this week's newsletter. I think I put it into one of the dailies, but it's like about how John Deere is just hiring a chief tractor officer who essentially is just like a TikTok influencer who's going to make videos about tractors. And as one letter writer wrote, is going to interview hot farmers. Sounds awesome, but on the same token, like John Deere's, and I shout out Ryan Mack, our former colleague, who told me this, but John Deere's mission is to help farmers feed the world. Like, at what point does TikTok intercede there, or is that just like a bridge too far?
No, I
so
think
to speak.
It's a good question. I always come back to like, I think there are some brands that have a mission and a legacy that does not fully accommodate super unserious things yet, that feel, very young leaning or social leaning. But
Yeah.
to the point of like things that are deeply unserious. I like that brands like John Deere are trying shit like this, because I'm like, 5-10 years ago they would not have it all, and they're seeing that it's working for other brands, and it is a risk, and I'm always down for a risk as long as it's not politically offensive or alienating.
Yeah, I just worry. I mean, I worry about it because it just doesn't seem like it doesn't
It's
seem on
not.
strategy. It's like if your mission is to help farmers feed the world, like at what point does that fit the strategy? And I obviously we can twist and contort ourselves into a logic that says, well, by exposing the brand and the mission, but it's a contortion, not an expression of the mission.
My
And
question
that's
would
what I
be
find
like,
interesting about it.
John Deere, is there someone internally that's considering the emergence of all these young farmers growing audiences on TikTok and giving a glimpse to the masses into like a new approach to farming, people taking over family farms?
Yeah.
I mean, there's that I would be like, is that part of strategy? And then is this, creative approach paying that off? Which is an interesting runway into the future of that, and still on strategy. But we'd have to call up John Deere and phone a friend on this, wouldn't we, Ben? And maybe we can.
Let's hope so. All right. Well, listen, the ostensible purpose of this conversation is to talk about stories that are in the newsletter. And we've just talked about one that is not in the newsletter. We talked earlier about one that is in the newsletter, but that you didn't highlight. But you highlighted some stories that you thought were particularly interesting. And I want to start with the one that you highlighted last, which was about microfeminism. I have always known you as a strong female leader, and let's say a femme positive person, generally speaking. But I wonder, is microfeminism just being nice to people? Yeah, exactly. Chivalry, exactly.
I think it might be. I feel like the term feminism just like keeps being used for like things that it isn't. I don't know. The evolution of that term is a separate conversation that I find fascinating and weird. But I think it is just like not being an asshole. And like not being an asshole, not as a function of gender and identity and equality, but like maybe just not being a dick, and like consideration of other people, and consideration of like the little things, like the buying someone a coffee and holding a door, and that doesn't matter who the person is who you're holding the door for. But I don't know. I mean, it's related to that other article around like the rise of compassion and empathy, which like I'm on the fence about. But I do think there is a concurrent rising hatred of one another, but also a concurrent act of all these like small things. Like there's like very small, beautiful moments happening that are remnants of how hard the last few years were, and we got to watch out for each other. But then there's also like, this isn't in your newsletter, but like that article recently about how everyone hates each other's dogs in New York City, and how dogs are starting to become the focus of like the collective hatred that we have for each other, that's like bubbling to the surface. And then like New York Mags last year, like we forgot how to behave. So I'm like, it's weird. I'm like, I don't know, like, where's the data coming from? Because I'm seeing both things. I'm seeing microfeminism and many acts of kindness, and donations are up and volunteering is
I
up.
wonder to what extent there is data.
People hate my fucking dog. Which is it?
I mean, it's both, right? And the problem is that we live in a dynamic that encourages us to think in binaries. Something is or is not something.
A dissertation.
I agree. Well, I mean, as a microfeminist, I will say that I think you make a very good point there.
Hoping to be a microfeminist with microfeminist tendencies, I would tend to agree.
No, you were supposed to tell me that's a strange hat.
What?
That would be microaggressive.
What do you think would be a very like turnkey way to enact acts of microfeminism in the day-to-day, the layperson?
Just, acknowledging that you made a good point for the first time all conversation.
I really appreciate that. Finally, I said something great.
Imagine, so stupid, so stupid. No, you've made a bunch of great points, Heather. And I love one of the things that I've always loved about you is that we can kid in a very knowing and self-disclosing fashion. And it, I don't know, as part of this is again, conversation I was having at breakfast this morning, but it was like one of the axioms that I learned early in my career from a woman who was a VP of marketing at Sony Music when I worked there and was a Cub project manager. She said, Ben, there are 3 rules of this place. One is you'll never get credit for saving the company money. The second is you'll never get credit for coming in under your expenses. And 3, never take a vacation because when you come back, you might not have a job. And I was like, at 25, I took that as just like gospel. And it was like, okay, that's what that means essentially is like, use the resources that are at your disposal to do the right thing. Don't worry about the consequences short term, worry about the effect long term, and work hard. Like I didn't take I didn't take any of that as like literal stuff, right? But I started, so I used to relate that story to people, particularly young people who worked with me and for me and so on and so forth. And at a certain point, that story stopped resonating and started being a horror story. And people were just like, oh my God, that's awful. Did you quit immediately on the spot? Like, it almost like I was abused or something. And I was just like, no, what? And it starts, to me, it feels a little bit like we are right sizing again. Not to say that any of that stuff is correct, but that you can start to read between the lines of it and interpret the truth there, as opposed to being like, oh my God, this is inhuman kind of thing.
I mean, I
don't know. What do you think about that?
would have interpreted, I would have like shit my pants in terror at that when I was that age, but I also would have, to be crass, I would have literally, but I think I also would have seen it as a bit of, for effect. To shock them.
I mean, it was the VP after all.
Oh no, you froze. You're back. You froze.
You froze.
You froze.
You froze.
I would have done it for the shock value. I would have shit quickly, and then I would have internalized that. But I also think we're aroundish the same age. Like in my 20s in New York City, coming up in my career, like I was like, I will do anything. I will sleep under my desk. I will march in the system to get it fucking done. I don't know if that's right. I also don't know if that's what the youngs are doing now. What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, it's funny you should say that, actually. So one of the projects I'm working on is with an agency based down in Austin, and they are they just moved into offices after being fully remote. Post-pandemic, a previous lease had run out and they just were fully remote for a while. They moved in, and one of the guys that I'm working with is this young creative just out of school. And what the principals of the agency said, they were just like, oh man, he lives in the office. He's there all the time, because when you're 24, where else do you go, right? You've got a place to hang, you've got TV, you've got drinks, you've got your friends, you've got all of that stuff. Like, why not? And that's a point of view that resonates very deeply with me, but maybe, to your point, is not the properly held one. You there, Heather? Oh dear. And we're back. That was a little bit of a technical difficulty, so hopefully I'm good enough to edit it later in the podcast app and nobody will notice. We'll see. I've done it before. Anyway, Heather, let's talk about what else jumped out at you from the newsletter this week.
Can we talk about Balthazar mice?
We can talk about Balthazar mice. So this is a story where Keith McNally, owner of Balthazar, claimed that someone let loose 6 mice into the bar area at Balthazar, the storied New York restaurant that he owns, because he made a desultory comment about Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos' appearance at the White House. Essentially, she got her boobs out for Biden, and Keith was not impressed.
Yeah. Yes, 100% accurate.
So tell me, why do you bring it up? Why do you like that story so much? Talk about it.
I brought it up. and it has nothing to do with the comments, and it has nothing to do with Jeff Bezos, and everything to do with Balthazar becoming basically a cultural punching bag in
Mm,
New York City. Like, that has dealt with so much shit over the last year. And I am just living for it being this very specific space where all of these hijinks are happening. I mean, between the James Corden stuff, it's like the description of someone showing up in this article with a paper bag full of mice, that there's like a pseudo conspiracy around that, like that Balthazar is this object, like this, like, and you don't really care about it unless you lived in New York or you currently live in New York. It's
right.
like not news. However, I love it because of its specificity, because it is such a New York iconic place. And I mean, Balthazar like has that sort of miceless swagger to it still. Like, I feel like there's like a
The
flaming
miceless
test of
swagger of
time energy
Balthazar.
swagger of Balthazar. And you're like, you know what, Balthazar? Even you are susceptible to mice. Like, you're not above this stuff happening. And I know it's toxic, but I'm living for it. I'm like,
I
the
loved,
mice.
I loved, I love you know, it's funny. It's so the insane conspiratoriality of this whole thing is like, okay, so Keith McNally makes a negative comment about Lauren Sanchez. He gets dragged for it by a bunch of strong women in acts of social microfeminism. Then somebody theoretically tied to Lauren Sanchez, shows up, a socialite, and happens to be recording and happens to catch rodents behind the bar area. Keith McNally goes public with this story. Eater covers this whole thing, and within it, Eater notes as the last line of the story, which I thought was just great, the mouse in question was not white, which also throws this weird, like, PC, like racial undertone under it, which I just thought was like,
Yeah.
wow, that we're
like,
really operating. We're operating at so many different levels here right now, like, and all of them are insane, and none of them matter at all. But and yet somehow maybe they do. Who knows? Maybe the Indiana Jones of the future will find this post and go after it.
And this is why, Ben, I don't believe that compassion is back. And I do think that microaggressions are on the rise.
Oh my God, that was awful. A lot. That was a lot. Okay, fine. Fair enough.
It was a lot. It was
I'm going to do our next read in for puns.com. But I mean, look, once an editorial creative director, always an editorial creative director. Okay, so mice, you also liked, let's see. I'm just, now I've got to reopen.
I mean, do we want to talk about, speaking of mice, the rat race of the happiness versus busyness conundrum?
I mean, yeah, sure. Let's talk about that. So I asked you earlier where you lived on a continuum between fleeting and forever. Where do you live on a continuum between busyness and happiness?
Right now, I am incredibly busy and like not super happy. So like I think I'm like happy in moments, but I also feel like this sense of impending doom lately with no source, and I don't know what it is, because like objectively I feel great, nothing is wrong, knock on wood, like there's no like catastrophic thing in my life at the moment causing me stress, besides the general unease of existence. But I don't know what it is, and I'm like, is it busyness, per the article, of like people who are overly busy might be faster processors, however they're really fucking unhappy? Or is there a general sense of unease in the air, and it has nothing to do with the level I'm working or how overbooked my schedule is or any of that? Like, is the source wrong? Is it not?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, there's definitely general unease. I mean, nothing makes sense. Everything is moving faster than ever. You know, we could have a president return to office who is like authentically bad for the country
Yep.
It's and then of course all of the things that will happen as a second order of effect to that happening. So yeah, of course there's the sense of unease, but I think that the interesting question is like, is it how peculiar is it to right now versus how peculiar, versus it being a perennial thing that we just happen to notice more because we are more finely tuned or because we are served with more information or whatever the case is. I tell this story all the time. I was reading the Hunter S. Thompson, his anthology, The Great Shark Hunt, which is like 600 pages of essays that he wrote for various magazines over the course of time, Lapham's and Rolling Stones and so on and so forth. And one of the stories opens with this scene at the Capitol, on the Capitol steps, where rioters are threatening to take over essentially Congress. It was 1972. Or maybe even 1968. It was not 2006. It was Hunter S. Thompson obviously was dead before January 6th, rather, not 2006, January 6th. Yeah. These moments have happened before and they have been documented, but we aren't aware of them. And so we think of the moment that we're in as being unique. So yeah, that doesn't answer happiness or busyness, but I think it does diagnose the situation correctly. Like we are just looking at it through a lens of today as opposed to experiencing something net new. What do you think?
You made a good point though. Like I think it is the too much fucking information thing.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's just like we shouldn't know this much or have this much access to stuff, which is hard because for people like you and I who are steeped in things and the newsletters and reading the articles and on social and making work that's related to that and thinking about brands being more present in culture and making more things and reading more things. Like, it's like you can't avoid it, but we weren't supposed to read all the books, Ben. We weren't supposed to have little hand computers the size of a sandwich. Like we weren't supposed to have that on our wrists and in our hands and on our eyes, like goggles, screens. Like we weren't built for this shit. And to me, that's the source of the terror, not the busyness problem.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think though it's also the busyness, happiness thing. It also gets reflected through a different vector, which is that we also were made to be durable, to be flexible, to evolve and to change and to adapt, right, in our circumstances. And I think it's funny, as you were talking, anxious generation and how everybody has been wringing their hands for the last month about, like having given smartphones and social media to kids. What I tell everybody is it's like my kids are right in that zone that he's worried about. And they are old enough, I think, to have come through some of that sort of existential concern or those periods of existential concern. And it's not to say that they're fine because they've come through it. They are fine, and they're fine because that's their reality. They adjusted to it. And I think what we often do is project our own feelings or experience on other people and assume that they must be going through something exactly the way that we did, which is, you understand it, you center yourself, but it's also a little naive.
Do you think there's like a correct balance of ingesting the amount of things that are in the ether for us to ingest from things we're reading, watching, blah, blah, blah? Or like, do you think there's a balance of that between that and disappearing into the woods, being unreachable, which is my day-to-day fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, of course there is. Yeah, well, I mean, it is not for no reason that I've posed two questions about where you are along a continuum. Like we're all on a continuum constantly between, these binary points, right? And instead of we've been instructed to feel like you're at one end or the other, when in fact you're always somewhere in between. So yeah, there is a balance. I don't know, your balance is different than my balance. Like you want to ride horses. I want to stay away from horses.
I do.
For instance.
I do want to ride horses. But I will say, like, one thing I've always marveled about with you, Ben, and I
want to run from horses. They're terrifying.
I want to be more like you, where I feel like your habit of consumption doesn't impact your mental and physical health. Like you are such a prolific student of information constantly flowing into your skull. And I've gotten good at it, but I'm not like Ben Dietz level good. Like you are just
Hmm.
like 9 books you're reading at once, curating your links, talking to the people. Like, where does he get the energy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting, right? Because the newsletter is a good barometer of this, right? Like when you first started getting it, when I started it back at Virtue, it was, it was 10 links, it was 20 links. It was just it was really just an attempt to try to bring people to the place where I was and to be generous. Now it's much more of a reflection of like the actual amount of stuff that I consume and that I feel like is worthwhile. And I struggle all the time with that question because I worry that I put too much in. Then again, every time I ask, is this too much? People say, no, give us more, which strikes me as weird because I think most people probably consume it the way that you do, where it's just like, whoa, this is a lot, but they're glad to have it. So it's like, all right, fine. So in other words, the way to get to be like me is to don't do that. Don't try to get to be like me.
I'm like, I feel an insatiable drive to read and listen to and consume as much information as possible. I think I've always been like that to a degree, but I
Yeah.
wonder, I'm like, I don't know what the source of that drive is. I mean, I can like,
Well,
predict
yeah. I mean, is
certain
it that's interesting for me. It's like that information is cultural capital. It has always been cultural capital for me. Like for me, the way
Yep.
to stand apart from other people when I was a kid was essentially to have a bit of information or a bit of access that nobody else had. And so I have chased that for my whole life. And it is very deep seated. It goes back very early on. By the same token, it resembles the tradition of Western liberal art education in that you are
Yep.
widely read, that you are broadly informed, and that kind of stuff. So there's a programmatic element to it, and there's a psychological element to it, which is intriguing, I guess.
Do you think it all comes back? I mean, I agree with you. Like I also think I'm curious, like a natural curious person, so I want to
Mm-hmm.
seek out stuff. Like when I see you and I always have a million things to talk about because we're both like, did you see this? Did you read this? Were you at this thing? Which I think is great. And I don't know. I wish I'm like I think I still am working out even at this age, like what's the right amount for me that still balances with like shutting some shit off. But I want to keep up. I want to be ahead of the things, and I also want to have information that gets me excited to like be alive. And I know that sounds like a bit deep, but like when you're reading about all the crazy things happening in the world and listening to the Cargo Pants podcast about the, the
Japants.
supply chain, like
They're called Japants. Japants.
pants. When you're listening to the Japan's podcast, your brain is like unlocking all these like new things. So I think it's like a necessary evil, man.
Yeah, well, it's fun. Well, I guess it's true. It's also it's a way of relating to one another, and certainly that's how the newsletter started out. And in fact, sorry, you made a joke that I didn't get until just a second ago, which was you. So in the newsletter, there is a story that I pulled out of. Oh man, I'm trying to think of where I got that from. But it's about there's a podcast called Cargo Shorts, which is done. Oh, I know. Yeah, I know who wrote it. It was from Alex. I got that from Alex Morris's excellent Strat Scraps newsletter. Another former colleague of ours from Virtue.
Oh, that great newsletter.
Great newsletter, right? Like Alex does a fantastic job with it. But Alex ordered a kayak which was delivered by Old Dominion Freight, and he had a really positive customer service experience, and he ended up quitting Amazon Prime over it. But in the in digging further into Old Dominion, he found that they have a podcast called Cargo Shorts, which is literally, it's a short podcast about logistics, which is kind of amazing. And but because you said cargo shorts, I thought you were talking about my cargo pants, which you saw on camera earlier, and which are from Japan. And so that's why I said Japan. Anyway, the point basically is, it's like, if you don't have command of all of these references, you miss the joke. And that's that's
Yes.
what the worst thing today, right? Is that you miss the joke in contemporary society.
Oh my God, that is the worst thing. Like, there's nothing worse than missing the joke or not being in on it. And you've always said
But
that.
I've never said that. That's because I don't believe that. That's a stupid way to go about life. Like, you're never going to be in on all the jokes. How could you possibly? That What a dumb positional statement. And yet people
I mean,
seem to take it all the time.
I feel like you should be in on the jokes with the people around you that matter to you, and I
Yeah, of
think that's
course.
what, like, bonds you. And that's why, I think it's cool, like, and it's interesting how, with Breakfast Club and things like SIC Weekly, it's fodder for discussion and connection in a community. And at the end of the day, like, that's the benefit of a huge amount of information. Like, it gives multiple connection points for people to come together, to spark new ideas, to co-create, and to honestly just continue having acts of microfeminism for one another. At the end of the day.
I mean, that is really the thing, isn't it? It's like, microfeminism isn't about doing acts of kindness for women. It's about just not being a dick, as you said. We should all aspire to be
Yeah.
microfeminists. We should all aspire to
Yeah.
make up
Micro
new terms. Oh my God. From the micro to the macro, I want to talk
What
about
else
another
have
story that you mentioned. Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to talk about another story that you mentioned,
Yeah.
which was the beaver dam that can be seen from space. What did you like about the beaver
Oh,
dam that
let's
can be seen from
fucking go.
space?
I like
Oh,
so many things about it. I mean, I just feel like the Beavers pulled off that surprise and delight thumb-stopping content that everyone strives for, with a very specific and elegant plan.
I mean, I got to tell you, like, I would have loved to have been a fly on the proverbial dam wall of the beaver agency that came up with it. This is from a story from Cocky, and it's which is a great multifarious news source. But a family of beavers in Canada has built a dam that's twice as wide as the Hoover Dam. It's The huge dam is kind of a clickbaity promotion, but the essence of the video is how beavers make landscapes more resilient to effects of climate change. This news story, right? Like, the idea that that beavers are excellent agents of landscape change is not a new one, but like, finding this hook into the notion of, like, how we can pay attention to the way macro forces can be shaped by micro actions, I think, is really interesting. It reminds me a little bit, by the way, have you seen the Tim Robinson of I Think You Should Leave did a series of, or at least one video for the UN about climate change, where his character talks to a climate scientist and is like, "You think I'm going to believe that?" And it's very it's very like it's very Tim Robinson, and it's pretty good, but it speaks to a certain impulse that we I think everyone now has to sort of advertorialize everything, and I as somebody who is versed and practiced in those dark arts, I wonder if you have a point of view about, like, do beavers need a hook?
I mean, do beavers need a hook is the question to ask. I mean, I think the beavers had a cultural insight that they took advantage of on how to get human attention. And I don't even know. I like to believe that the beavers had it planned all along. But that was the beavers moonshot for 2024. Like, they blew the budget
It,
on that, the energetic budget. And The
Ew.
beavers pulled it off.
Yeah,
I
those
also,
beavers are
I
those
also
beavers
think
are
that
achievers. The
those achiever beavers are fucking achieving. I also think, like, interestingly, on the point of climate change, like the like topics like that feel incredibly big and nebulous, which I think competes with our ability to care.
Sure.
Which, when something feels too big, we don't know how to do anything about it, so we just reshare Instagram posts about the fucking earth, but like no one is really doing anything. However, I think
Shout
that
out the
the
Earth.
beavers had a unique way in. Yeah. The beavers had a unique way in to call attention to a big global issue about our planet. So, yes, tan lion. But also, I think, to the Tim Robinson example too, like, get creative and attention grabbing and build a huge dam and make content like that around topics that maybe are being communicated in the same way in a bunch of places. Because I think a lot of stuff around major issues, if you're looking at the beavers as a moment of activism or Tim Robinson content, people need to get a little bit more creative in speaking about big global issues that we need to participate in.
Sure.
And the beavers
Well, okay.
fucking did that.
Beaver, these beavers achieved. Okay, so here is the question then. Speaking of Cannes, where we have historically seen each other and had some of our most productive and yet unhinged discussions, is it time for
Yes.
Cannes Lions to open up a new subdivision called Cannes Beavers that is about taking on the challenge of climate change?
Yeah, I think I'm wondering if like Davos will want to like house that within it, or if it will live in the Cannes universe. I do think
It's too. The
I do
problem is
think
it's
the sort
too
of
big for Davos. Davos is a
it's too
small
big for Davos.
town. That dam will never fit in Davos.
Where do you think the Cannes Beavers annual summit will fit?
Well, the thing that I like about it is that maybe we could bring the dam over and we could block the entrance to the harbor, and so there'll be no mega yachts.
Yeah. We're building dams. Every yacht replaced with a beaver dam. You know what? The Cannes Beavers is going to be, astronomically more productive than Cannes Lions is in general. So I think and I think there'll be something to show for it.
Well,
There'll be
look, big
physical
shout out,
evidence of productivity.
big shout out to the Beaver Achievers, and of course to our Cannes Lions family. This podcast has been brought to you by Cannes Lions, the #1 festival for creativity in the south of France every year.
Every year.
Just
Get your
joking, but please
tickets
bring us
now.
back. Just yeah, exactly. Oh
Please
man.
sponsor
Well,
Ben and I Beavers.
exactly. Well, listen, Heather, it is you are right. In the two of us could literally talk for hours about nothing in particular, but it has been fun kind of going through and doing a précis of the newsletter and memorializing the conversation this time, not having it be something that disappears to the internal servers of Instagram like last time. Before we go, any sort of final thoughts, anything that you want to get off your chest, any links that we didn't cover?
All the links were great. I will plug the SIC Weekly newsletter, and laud the drive of everyone among us to continue overconsumption of information, because it will make this world more empathetic, compassionate, interesting, and filled with micro moments of love.
We're going to do our best from the micro to the macro. All right. Well, listen, Heather, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And guys, now that we are on Spotify, please subscribe to the pod. That would be great. Or share it around or do whatever you want. And looking forward to seeing the comments and all that stuff. So say nice things about Heather and me in acts of microfeminism, please. Okay.
Say nice
Heather,
things.
my darling, we will talk again soon. Thanks for being
Ben.
here.
Blessings. Bye.